Hey Addicts, welcome back to the channel. We're here for another game review. I know it's been a hot minute since we've had any relevant content come out. It's been a little slow, it's been a little hard getting some schedules to work out for recording, but we're back now, so hopefully, we won't be spending too long playing catch up and we're going to have some new stuff coming out for you. But anyway, we're here to talk about a game that came out a little bit over a month ago. I'm actually really excited to talk about it because it was one of probably my top 3 games that I was most excited for the year, and that is Remedy's Control, out on all systems, I believe. You can fact check me if you want and put it in the comments, but I'm pretty sure it's out on PC as well. It's also on Xbox and obviously PlayStation 4. Now, I'm going to get into a side rant real quick. Not rant, but just like little remark here. So these stickers they've been putting on physical copy discs? Yeah, if anybody in the industry is watching this right now, can you guys please stop doing that? Because I don't know, I'm just speaking for myself, but I would imagine other people like me that, still buy physical copies and, buy it mainly probably because, well, either you don't have internet or, like me, I'm a collector, so I like, physical boxes and seeing the cover art. And when you put stickers like this, like actually printed onto the cover, it's like, can we not, please? Because I don't want it to cover up that cover art. But anyway, that's just a small little thing. Probably won't ever get changed. It's just how they do things now. But a little sad that my copy has that. But oh well. Exclusive content is always good, right? But anyway, guys, we're gonna start with the story like we typically do. It's gonna be hopefully a shorter video. We're still gonna try to cover everything that I want to cover that we normally do in these reviews. I am going to do something a little bit different in terms of the story, at least at the beginning. I actually have a write-up. I wrote up something beforehand that I'm just going to read off to give you guys an idea of what the story is. So if you don't like that, let me know in the comments. But anyway, guys, I'm going to try to read this for the 4th frickin' time. And I'm going to try to not stutter any of it. So, in Control, you play as Jessie Faden, a woman with a scarring past that sets out on her life mission to find her long-missing brother. With the help of her only friend, Polaris, an entity that's been with her since youth, they reach the biggest lead into their search, the Bureau of Control. Hiding in plain sight, the Bureau is a secret department in charge with dealing with all supernatural, bizarre, and otherwise unexplained occurrences. When Jessie arrives, the building goes on lockdown, leaving her and Polaris to fight their way through in order to dive deeper, not only into the ever-changing labyrinth that is known as the oldest house, but also the secrets within it. So, segueing into that, I want to talk about just my thoughts on the story, because even though Remedy is known for having gameplay-heavy games, the story has always been, I think, an influential part of their games. They do like to tell stories, and a lot of the stories that they have done in the past have been really good. One of my favorite, older school games is Max Payne, and they've helped do that, and I absolutely love that. So, and they have Alan Wake that's a little bit more in line with this. With that being said, there's a couple things that they do great in those games that they also do great in this game. For instance, I absolutely love the atmosphere. It's super. It's just got this feeling that screams like sci-fi, like supernatural conspiracy, and that's one of my favorite genres, and I think they nailed it to a T. Even the subtle. Not subtle, but small things. For instance, when you go into a new area, it pops up white, big, bold lettering. And I can't think that's a reference to something, because I know I've seen a movie or something sci-fi related that has done that in terms of when they go to a different location. So I like that though. But on top of that, I think they also establish a really intriguing world, and they really fill the game with a lot of lore of this universe, and I really do like a lot of the lore aspects. I mean, again, if you're a fan of that conspiracy type stuff, or you just find it interesting, there's a lot of stuff that they put in the game that is just you'll be loving to find. Now, in terms of the story, there is a couple of gripes I have that I either like hated or I found a little disappointing. Not flat out hated. It was more of like just a disappointment. That is that even though I do love the mystery aspect of the game, in certain areas it is a bit too much, I think, in terms of being a detriment to itself or some of the aspects of it. And I'm going to clarify that because I don't want to get too out of my way or get the wrong impression. I'm mainly talking towards only one aspect, and that is to Jesse, the main character, because there is not a lot, but there is a good amount of side characters, and I think they absolutely knock it out of the park with using the right amount of mystery and having that intrigue at the beginning, and then you learn a little bit more, and there's still like answers that you don't get full questions to, but it's just like a really cool, gripping type of telling those stories with some of those side characters. I think a few highlights is with Trench, the old director that you kind of speak with still, and then also, of course, Jesse's brother Dylan, which that's more spoilery, so I'm not going to touch that. But then also the science guy, which I don't remember his name in the game, but if you've seen trailers or clips of it, he is the guy that's in like the training videos that are in live action, and I think those, like especially where they're placed in the game, just really speak for what's going on in like certain sections of the game. As far as Jesse though, I think the main thing for it is the game. The way the game starts, it just drops you right across the street from the map essentially of where you're going to be at in the game. There's no prior inkling of that, which is fine. You can still do things, but I think throughout the game, you don't really get a connection with her. There's nothing that really draws you to wanting to see what that means for her, and that kind of leads to like some of the bigger reveals kind of just being like, like a shrug. And it's not to say they aren't good, like it's not well put together in terms of like the story aspect. It's just for her character and specifically, there's not much that really makes you invested in what she's going through in that moment, what her motivations are. And again, it's a little hard when you want to go for the mystery aspect, but I think one thing, and this is kind of like a spitball thing, but I think maybe one thing that could have really helped with this is just having one little sequence of gameplay, or maybe just even a cutscene beforehand showing some of the stuff that happened in her childhood, or just the event that I won't say it here, but there's a certain event that happens in her life that is really prevalent to the story, and I think maybe seeing just little glimpses of that, or maybe just something. If you've seen like some thriller movies, how they kind of do like a flashback shot or sequence, but it's still very vague. It's something just like that I think would have really helped kind of give you a little bit more connection to her character. I do know that Remedy, again, like I've said before, is known for more of their gameplay than their story, even though the story is a big aspect. So really, it's just a little thing, but I think for a first entry into a potential franchise, it's something that's just a little sad that you don't have like that immediate connection with the main protagonist. But it's definitely something that in like its potential sequels, I really want to see more of Jesse kind of be, have that more connection. And it's probably possible since, sequels leave that open a little bit more. Now, since I did mention the gameplay, let's get into the gameplay aspects. So the gameplay, as you've seen before, probably one of the big attractions for the people that did want to play it was that there is supernatural powers in terms of like levitation, kind of telekinesis, stuff like that. There's a bit more things that we will go into depth, but there's also the mix of firearms and using what is called in the game the service weapon. So we'll just touch on that one first. So the service weapon is an object of power, which I won't go into the lore of it because it explains really early on in the game, but it's basically a weapon that kind of mimics whatever like the person's wielding it can do, and in this case it is a gun, and it can act as multiple guns without being a different gun. If that makes sense. Maybe I worded that wrong. But anyway, there is 4 main types. I should have probably double-checked to make sure that was right. But the first one you start off with is grip. That is more of like your standard pistol. It shoots 1 projectile. And, obviously you can upgrade to have more ammo, but that is basically the gist of that one. They have one called scatter, which, no-brainer. Shotgun version. You also have one that's called spin. That's more of a like SMG Uzi type thing. Then you have Pierce, which is kind of like a charged like laser attack. And then they also have one more, which I forgot the name of, but it's more of like a grenade launcher. And then in terms of the powers, you have about the same number of powers. You got shield, which you can like rip things from your environment to block incoming damage. You can also use it in an offensive way through some upgrades. They have levitate, which is probably the coolest ability, I think, just seeing done in a game, because we don't get many powers or gameplay aspects that really goes to more of like a flying. So I found that really cool. There's again some more, upgrades that really make these, more coming across as passive abilities really affect the gameplay in an offensive scenario. So like that one, there's a ground pound ability that you can get on top of the levitation tree. You also have like this mind control. That's probably like the most watered down power, I feel like. But if you've played anything like the Force Unleashed 2 comes to mind, like with Jedi Mind Trick, it's basically the same thing. You can have enemies fight for you for a short time. You also have, I don't remember what they called in the game, but it's basically essentially you're telekinetic, like, you grab things. I think it's maybe just called grab, but, and that lets you do, obviously like rip things off the wall or, pick up a desk and then chuck it at your enemies with your mind. But this is, gameplay. I will highlight just real quick, because I don't want to spend too much time on it, but I really did love that this game had such a well-knit balance in terms of using all of the abilities. They've always been a really good job of, making a third-person action shooting game that isn't just like a cover shooter like so many are nowadays, and that's always something I've really liked about them. But having the powers aspect and having it a full balance of like, hey, you have to use the service weapon in this instance, or you can use the powers in this instance, but if you combo them, there's a good way to combo them and use them in an effective manner that's going to be like most optimal for your situation. And I just really like that, because in some other games that kind of have both aspects in play, they seem to lean more towards one or the other. And this one, I think it's probably one of the first games I've played that has a mixture of kind of like weapon types and abilities that actually has you using them like a 50-50. And I really do give that 2 thumbs up in my book. As far as some other gameplay features, there is varied enemy types, which I was expecting there not to be a whole lot, but there still isn't not a lot, but there was definitely more than I was expecting, and I think it's an adequate amount for just kind of like what the length of the game is and the map space. Now the leveling, I'm not gonna go into depth for this because it is basically to a T like the leveling standard of like this generation, which I guess side note, I don't hate it yet. I still like the leveling system that's been kind of like seen in games mostly for this generation in terms of like this type of game, but it is getting to the point where it's starting to get like a little bit old and I want to see some variety. So again, nothing groundbreaking, but it's it's not broken. So it's gonna be something that you're gonna like obviously know what works and how you're gonna progress through. Now the other thing I will say is I'm just gonna read this note right off the bat. There's also challenges and random missions that you complete for more loot. So, they have kind of like, they call them alerts, and you can go to a certain place on the map, do it, and you'll get a bonus. or they have kind of like side missions, not side missions, because they do have side missions that aren't these, but they have like these random generator challenges, I guess. I should just use my own word there. And you can basically get the same thing. It works hand in hand differently. It's just one's random and the other one you pick up and it doesn't disappear in a certain amount of time. There is side missions. It's very standard, again, to like any other game you've seen. I do think the side missions, for me overall, I liked them the most. I even liked it better than the main story. I think it's just because, one, there was a bit more variety in terms of what you were going up against, because it has kind of a connective tissue to powers, like you unlocking powers. So I do like that. And I would say that was probably the standout of all of the mission types that there was those side stories, or standard side missions. Now, the main gripe that I have with the gameplay aspect of it is the map is confusing as hell. Now, the map and like the area, they change over time, and that is kind of like a novel thing at first. Like, you think it's like, oh man, that's so cool. It adds to like that creepy, or like that, kind of just like labyrinth factor that they're trying to go with for the game. But it gets old real quick, and I mean real quick. There's just times that you just don't even know like where you're gonna go, and the way that they have the mission, or like the waypoint on the map, it's just like a dot. It doesn't have a line, and I've never really been a fan of that in games where it doesn't have the line. But if you have a good enough map, that shouldn't matter. You should be able to still navigate it. But because it changes and the map doesn't really have a good sense of direction of where you are or how to get there, it does line it up to be very confusing. They do help a little bit having the map easily accessible. You only have to press up like on the D-pad, and you can still have it up when you're moving. So that kind of helps a little bit in terms of navigation, but it's not going to do a whole lot for you. And again, like I said, the quest navigation is just a bit frustrating. Especially later in the game when you've unlocked a lot of the areas and there's only one or two and you're like just circling. One thing that's obviously a big thing to bring up is some of the technical issues. The frame rate does drop a bit. I don't know. I think the game, I'd say it's more of like a 30 FPS. I'm not that much of a tech guy, so I wouldn't know, but there's definitely times where it slows down pretty close. It's not a grinding halt, but it's like, 1, 2, 3. Okay, there, it's back again. Then 3, 4, 5. Okay, now it's fine. It kind of has to catch up. So I don't know. Maybe some real tech guys could figure that out just from me describing that at the little point. But yeah, just know it's not the best in terms of performance. But I will say, though, the game, when it is working, it looks fantastic. I do love like the lighting in it. It is like really great. Like their use of lighting, the use of like their textures. The textures do pop, but like the particle effects, those are something that just look great. And like especially in terms of like an interface level, I really think this is one of the finest feeling games in terms of control. Yeah, that's a pun, but whatever. But honestly though, like the movement, the reactiveness of those, sometimes it can get a little bit muddled when the tech isn't working like it's supposed to, but when everything's working smoothly, it feels amazing and it acts just like that. So I do really like that a lot. Now overall, I did really like the game. I think it's it's not a complete standout for me in terms of like this generation and all of the games we've had. I mean, we've had some kick-ass games, especially on the PlayStation. So for me, it's a game that I'll probably forget, to be honest, like in a few years, like when we're like halfway into the next generation, I'll probably forget I even played it. And then like, I'll just like see something come up in my recommended on YouTube or something. I'll be like, oh yeah, that game. I played that game. I liked that. But it's not like a groundbreaking one that you're just like, whoa, that was like one of the best games. So, but with that being said, I still think it is worth it, and that leads me into my rating. So if you guys, if you're looking at it, I would say it's go get it, because the main story, it has its ups and downs, but I think because of the side quests and because like the actual gameplay, is just like so fun and like so responsive, I think it makes it a definite try. At least like if you can get it, I'd still say it's still worth the $60. But hey, if you can get it on a sale for $40, you're gonna get. I think you'd be really happy at that price too. But anyway, guys, that'll conclude this review. I had a lot of fun with it, even though it was frustrating at times. So, if you just have those in mind and you really like that type of atmosphere like